Hello and welcome to the Leighton Cassette Podcast. Today I will be discussing The Mummy Returns. After the success of The Mummy in 1999, Stephen Sommers said he received a call at 6 a.m. Saturday, the day after the first Mummy opened, and was told that the studio wanted another Mummy movie. He decided to set the new movie 8 years after the events of the first one in 1933. However, this is not consistent with the timeline, as the O'Connells have an 8-year-old son in this movie, so either the filmmakers meant to set a year or two later, or Evie got pregnant and had a child before she met Rick in 1926, when the first one takes place. I read up online, and the popular theory is that this movie was supposed to take place in 1935 and not 1933. This is further evident in the movie whenever one of the characters who was talking about the Americans from the previous movie said it happened 9 years ago, so I think it's pretty clear that it was supposed to be 1935. Principal photography once again took place in the deserts of Morocco. They then filmed in England and at Shepperton Studios, where they recreated the pyramids, temples, and palaces for the ancient Egyptian scenes. Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, John Hannah, Arnold Vosloo, Oded Fehr, and Patricia Velasquez all returned to reprise their roles, and Stephen Sommers also returned to direct. Freddie Both plays Rick and Evie's son Alex. However, this film may most be remembered for being The Rock, aka Dwayne Johnson's breakout role. He was in a documentary in 1999, Beyond the Mat, about the professional wrestling industry at the height of the industry in the late 90s, early 2000s. However, this was his first major role in motion picture, and really served as a launch pad for him to have one of the biggest careers in all of Hollywood. Sorry, Hogan. The film opened May 4th, 2001, and took in $68 million in its opening weekend, and like its predecessor, it won the box office its first 2 weeks out. Ultimately, it made $433 million worldwide against a budget of $98 million, making it a hit and the 7th highest grossing movie of 2001. I don't really have a whole lot of other trivia on this one. It's kind of hard to find stuff about this Mummy movie, so we're actually going to get into the movie here, and I'll give you some little bits as we go along. Well, we once again begin in ancient Egypt, 5,000 years ago. We see the Scorpion King leading his army into a battle in Thebes, a battle which they ultimately lose. They are driven into the desert of Al-Mashir, where all of his soldiers die of heat exhaustion or dehydration. On his last legs, as he is about to die himself, the Scorpion King pledges to Anubis that if Anubis would spare him so that he could conquer his enemies, he would give Anubis his soul. Then we see a scorpion rise out of the sand, and the Scorpion King picks up the little son of a bitch while it stings the fuck out of him, and he eats that shit. As soon as he does, the oasis of Amshir arises. He is also given an army of jackals, and they wipe out everything and everyone. However, as soon as the task is complete, the Scorpion King's soul is taken by Anubis, and his CGI jackals disappear. The CGI jackals don't really look that great. You can definitely tell. It's some dated effects, but that's to be expected. We get a close-up of a scorpion bracelet falling off his wrist as his soul is claimed. This is foreshadowing. We then go to 1933, which I guess it's supposed to be 35, like I said earlier, at the same temple that was the place of the Scorpion King's last battle. Alex, Rick and Evie's son, scares the fuck out of Rick, and Alex wants to show Rick a tattoo that we never saw, or that was mentioned in the first one that Rick has, that's on Rick's wrist. Alex sees a drawing of the same tattoo on a temple wall. We learn Evie has had a dream that she has been in this temple before, and she seems to know her way around pretty good. Then we have 3 people arrive to take out the O'Connells. One of them goes to find them while the other two wait in the main part of the temple where Alex has scurried atop of some scaffolding after hearing them coming in. Evie has a vision while they attempt to enter another chamber in the temple. It's a vision, back in ancient Egypt. And she knows how to open the door with a key, much like in the first one. Rick tries to pry it open, but Evie walks over and it's kind of like an old school combination lock, it seems. She just moves it a few times and gets the door open. Evie finds the Scorpion King's emblem and says he is supposed to be pure myth. Now, having learned nothing from the first movie, they open a chest that contains the bracelet of Anubis that the king was wearing in the beginning. Also, not reading from the chest, the temple floods with water from the Nile River. The inscription said, "He who opens this chest or moves it will drink from the Nile," and this causes the place to flood. They booby-trapped it. Alex, who was hitting one of the looters with rocks from his slingshot, is discovered. And he gets the support of a scaffold kick off as the three flee. One of the guys went up there to kill Alex. The one guy said he's going to make a nice fillet out of you, so I guess he was going to cut him up. But as soon as the other guy who went to find the O'Connells comes running through there, says they need to get the fuck out. So he just kicks the scaffold and they take off. And we do get a repeat of the gag from the first movie as the scaffold falls into a giant pillar, creating a domino effect, knocking them all down. This is obviously a callback to the library scene where Evie knocks all the bookshelves over. Eventually, one of them crashes into the wall, freeing Rick and Evie, who were trapped and were about to drown. One thing I was wondering while I was watching this is why the roof doesn't come crashing down once the pillars fall. Were they just there for decoration? Don't really get that part of it, but I guess it was just there for the gag, but it doesn't seem like there was a reason in the movie for them except for the gag. But we then go to Hominoptera, where a large amount of diggers are trying to unbury the city. We see someone who looks like Anck-su-namun with the books of the living and the dead. We see the flesh-eating beetles pop out of the ground and eat some of the diggers. She said they are getting close, so we know they are looking for Imhotep, or we at least assume that. And it is here that we meet our human villain, Baltus Hayes, who we later learn is the curator of the British Museum. Now, he is the leader of a cult that worships Imhotep. They then find Imhotep's corpse and intend to raise him from the dead. Now, this is also kind of curious how they found the books, and it seems that they've had the books for a little bit. Maybe not, but because whenever Imhotep went into the black, tarry water substance, whatever the fuck that was at the end of the first one, Rick or Jonathan, I can't remember which one of them, drops the book in there, so I don't know how that works, but how they found the book before him. But the three baddies tell Baltus that the bracelet is on its way to London, and that they couldn't procure it. And we get a shot of Ardith working incognito as part of the crew, and he hears a conversation, and he looks at the crew kind of, I don't want to say intensely, but he looks at them with purpose. Back in London, at the O'Connells' mansion, this mansion also served as the exterior for Wayne Manor in Batman Begins. Evie tries to convince Rick to go find the Oasis of Amshir. Alex, who is carrying the chest, opens it and puts the bracelet on, and it shows him the pyramids of Giza, and then it rushes to the Temple of Karnak. It kind of looks like a projector going, and while he's standing on the bottom floor and his parents are standing on the top floor, and it's kind of the upstairs. It's got like an open floor plan upstairs. It's just kind of like a balcony. The second story is kind of like a balcony, so we can kind of see it from his we can see them, and then we can see Alex, who's just moving around holding the bracelet. But as Rick and Evie are about to kiss, Evie sees some woman's underwear, and Rick goes off to find Jonathan, who has obviously brought a young lady home. Baltus and his crew arrive, and they mistake Jonathan for Rick. And the Anoxuna Moon lookalike pulls out a snake and is about to kill Jonathan with it. I think she calls it an Egyptian wasp or wasp, something like that. Asp, maybe. And she's about to kill Jonathan in it when Rick walks in. Rick fights with them upstairs while a crew confronts Evie and Alex downstairs. Then suddenly Ardith arrives, and when Evie asks what he is doing there, he says, "Perhaps explanations are best saved for later," which is the screenwriter's way of saying, "I have no fucking idea." That's generally what that means whenever they try to put off an explanation, is they don't know how to write it into there, or they don't know the answer themselves, so we'll explain later just to kind of get around it. Evie proves to be a master swordsman, or swordswoman, I guess, and claims that she has no idea why she is so good at it. When Alex asks her where she learned that, and she goes, "I have no idea." We see that Ardith truly has no idea why they are there, because he asks what's in the chest. We see some more stormtrooper-like shooting at Rick and Jonathan from the cult upstairs. Evie is kidnapped and the cult flees. Ardith, Rick, and Jonathan and Alex meet downstairs, and they head to the British Museum after Ardith shows them a picture of Baltus, and Alex recognizes him. Rick guesses correctly that they want to raise Imhotep. Alex shows them that he put the bracelet on, and that it showed him the Temple of Karnak. Ardith says that by putting on the bracelet, it will awaken the Scorpion King and the army of Anubis in 7 days, and whoever kills the Scorpion King can either send his army back to the underworld or use it to wipe out the world. And Imhotep is the only one strong enough to do it. Ardith and Rick gear up while Alex and Jonathan watch the car. Well, technically, Alex was watching the car and Jonathan was watching Alex. While Ardith and Rick are arming themselves, Ardith spots Rick's tattoo and starts some kind of saying that Rick finishes, but has no idea how he knows it. Ardith says that it's a sacred mark and that means he's a Magi, but Rick denies it. He said he got it slapped on him when he was in an orphanage in Cairo. Which is also kind of confusing because Rick is clearly American, and they even state that as such in the first one, so maybe his parents went over to Egypt or whatever and just dropped him off and said, "Here you go, bud," and left. Doesn't really explain that. I guess it's not important. It's just kind of a little inconsistency. Inside the museum, Baltus and the cult awaken Imhotep and tell him that it is the year of the Scorpion in the Egyptian New Year, a fact that he's no doubt pleased by. Our Anoxuna Moon lookalike enters and tells Imhotep that she is Anoxuna Moon reincarnated. He says that she is only Anoxuna Moon reincarnated in body, but that soon he will bring her soul back from the underworld. This kind of sounds familiar. Anoxuna Moon got Evie as a gift for Imhotep to watch her die. But Rick, as he's wont to do, saves her just as she's about to be tossed into a fire. A gunfight breaks out as Rick and Evie and Ardith escape. Imhotep raises some mummies to take them out. Jonathan and Alex grab a double-decker bus to escape in after Jonathan breaks the key to the car. One little bit of trivia I do have is that they had to get these buses that they used for this scene from private collectors, and they actually put ads of the time period on the buses, which is kind of a cool little detail. The mummies chase the bus through the streets of London. I believe there was 4 of them. Now they eventually do defeat the mummies, but they lose the top part of the bus in the process. Another funny little thing is after Rick asks Ardith if he's okay after the chase, and he's kind of breathing heavy, and he says, "Well, this was my first bus ride." It was kind of funny, it's Stupid little line, but got a little chuckle out of me. But Jonathan stupidly stops the bus in the middle of a bridge, and while everyone is catching their breath and Rick and Evie are about to make out, Lochna, who is Baltus' right-hand man, snatches Alex off the bus and they take off in a car. And they have someone raise the bridge as Rick chases them on foot, but he has no chance to catch them as the bridge raises before he can even have a shot at even coming close to the car. The next morning, a train with Imhotep and the cult departs Cairo. Lochna, who's kind of Alex's babysitter in this movie, I guess, takes Alex to meet Imhotep. And Imhotep reveals he can speak English, which would have eliminated a whole lot of subtitle reading from the first one and this one. But it wouldn't give you that ancient Egyptian feel, so. But Imhotep tells Alex that if he isn't inside the pyramid of Am-Shir by the dawn on day 7, the bracelet will suck the life out of him. Now, after this meeting, Anok-Sunamun leads the 3 guys we meet at the beginning who went to kill Rick and Evie to steal the chest from him to the back of the train. Now, they stole the chest that the Americans found in the first movie, and they demanded more money. I think they agreed to be paid 5, but they had to kill a couple people to get it, so now they want 10. So she leads them to the back of the train, and she locks them in the car. And Imhotep appears, and he fucks with them, scares them, and whatnot. And as one of the guys is banging on the door to try to get out, she opens the little kind of like eye hole where you can look in and says that he wants them to open the chest. So she tricks them into opening the chest so Imhotep can suck the life out of them and regenerate, which he does promptly. Rick, Jonathan, and Evie go to see Rick's old friend Izzy to fly them to Karnak. Izzy agrees after some hesitation because he says every time he sees Rick he gets shot, which, being a movie and a half in, you can kind of understand. You could kind of picture that and understand why he would be hesitant. But Izzy agrees if Rick will give him the golden staff Jonathan's been carrying around, which he does. Ardith meets them to go with him in another funny little gag as he says, "Why can't you people ever keep your feet on the ground?" And it's in this scene here that we are introduced to the commanders of the Magi army, I guess. But Rick is pissed when he sees Izzy has a balloon instead of a plane, but they agree to go nonetheless. It's kind of a cool little, thing. It's, just a huge, kind of looks like a blimp thing, and it's got a deck, a big deck underneath. There's room for all of them to sprawl out and chill and whatnot. So it is kind of a cool little travel way. On the train, Alex annoys Lochna by asking him, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" over and over. And Alex tells Lochna he has to go to the bathroom. And it's kind of another funny little gag as Lochna's just standing there waiting. And Alex says, "Oh, I can't go if someone's watching." And Lochna turns around and Alex says, I don't trust you, you'll look." And Lochna gets this look on his face like, "What the fuck?" And then he looks at Alex and he leaves, because what are you going to do, argue with the kid? You're better off just to walk away so you don't come across as a creeper. But Alex pulls the emergency brake that stops the train after he flushes the toilet and sees that he could kind of escape through there. He pulls it away from the wall and sees a hole in the floor. So he escapes from under the train after it stops, and he flees into the temple. A lot of the guards start shooting at Alex, and this pisses Imhotep off. He doesn't want Alex dead, not yet anyway, so he picks a couple of the guards up and tosses them against, a couple of the cult members up and tosses them against the pillars of the temple. Now, after Alex gets inside the temple, the bracelet shows him the next destination. We get a visual here of Imhotep walking on water. I don't know if there's supposed to be subtext there, but I honestly never really noticed it until I watched it this past time. I watched it once last year, but it's the first time. Last year was the first time I had seen this movie in about 10, at least 10 years. So it was kind of a neat thing to pick up on that I didn't notice before. Now, that night, Evie and Anoxuna Moon have a shared dream slash vision of their past lives. And in this vision, the two of them are fighting in front of the Pharaoh and his court. It's revealed that Evie is Queen Nefertiti reincarnated, and she is also the daughter of Seti in her past life. She was also the protector of the bracelet, and Anoxuna Moon was the protector of Seti. They're both, warrior women. We see the events of the first movie from Evie or Nefertiti, whatever you want to say, Nefertiti, from her perspective on a balcony across from her father's palace as she witnesses his murder as she witnesses his murder at the hands of Imhotep and Anoxuna Moon. Now, as she witnesses his murder, present-day Evie screams and falls off the balloon. She starts just walking forward and falls off. But luckily, Rick catches her and saves her before she falls to her death, which she no doubt would have from that height. As Anoxuna Moon finishes her part of the vision, she kind of acts out the end of it, even doing taking her two hands and doing the stabbing motion of herself in the gut. Imhotep raises her soul. Finally. He finally got that shit done after 3,000 years. Ardith explains that Evie, Rick, and Alex are the three sides of a pyramid, as Evie was the bracelet's protector, Rick's her protector as a Magi, and Alex is the way to Amshir. Kind of a bit of a clunky way to get there, but we got there. It makes sense when he explains it, but more on that later. Lochna brings Alex water while they're at the temple of Karnak that he uses to build a sandcastle to the next step of the journey. The sandcastle that he leaves behind little articles of clothing near the sandcastle or over them to show Rick and Evie the next parts of the journey. This continues for the next several destinations until Lochna catches him. And Imhotep, in another callback to the first movie, uses the Blue Nile to make a giant wave, complete with another face to take the balloon down. Now this is clearly CG water. You can tell it is. Imhotep's standing in the middle of it, and the way the camera is, you can definitely tell that water's not there. Or it's at least not up to his sternum as it appears. However, Rick, Evie, Jonathan, Izzy, and Ardith find the oasis right before Imhotep's water wave takes the balloon down. Izzy gets to work on fixing the balloon while the others go find Alex. Lochna shoots Ardith's bird, which he was using to communicate with the commanders of the Magi. It's clear that at the beginning fight, whenever Ardith shows up to the O'Connells, him and Lochna have some dialogue, which it's clear that they know each other and that Lochna has some kind of disdain for Magi for whatever reason. And he sees this bird a couple times, so it's kind of clear, I guess, and especially after he finds Alex's clues, that it's clear that this is how he's using the bird to communicate, maybe with the other leaders of the Magi. Now, walking through the oasis, the cult finds many armies dead. I think they say there's Napoleons and turn of the century French just in cages, and I guess they could tell by their clothing that they're wearing. Rick and Ardith head to the ground where the cult is, while Evie and Jonathan post up on a cliff. These little pygmy fucking things start attacking the cult. These little I don't even know what to call them. They look kind of like monkey, little tiny monkey skeletons, but they're only a couple. They're not even a foot tall, I don't think. They're little creepy fucks. But they start attacking the cult and they're vicious. Rick and Ardith open the fire on the cult while they are being attacked. The cult opens gunfire on these little things. They can't see them because they're coming up in tall grass. Kind of reminds me of the scene in Jurassic, the second Jurassic Park movie, whenever some of the people are getting taken down. The Lost World, that's the second Jurassic Park movie. That's the Lost World. Ardith and Lochner have a sword fight that ultimately ends in Lochner's death. Now, after Rick saves Alex, Lochner wants to kill Alex, and he makes this clear several times in the movie. And when he's finally about to kill him, Rick swoops in and grabs him and takes off with him. That's when the sword fight between Ardith and Lochner breaks out. Now then, Ardith flees to tell the commanders where they are since the bird was shot. Rick throws dynamite at the little pygmy fucks as they are crossing a makeshift bridge that's just a fallen down tree. After they are safe from that, Rick takes off with Alex after Alex tells him he has to be in the pyramid before the sun hits it. They just make it inside the pyramid right as the sun's about to hit them. The bracelet then pops off and Alex throws it. Anoxuna Moon and Imhotep appear, and Anoxuna Moon stabs Evie, killing her. Back in the temple, Baltus finds the bracelet and puts it on, because as soon as Evie's stabbed, Rick and Alex make a beeline towards Evie, and the bracelet's just laying there, so Baltus just scoops that shit right up as he's walking by. When Imhotep enters the part of the pyramid to fight the Scorpion King, Anubis takes his power to force him to fight as a mortal. Baltus sticks his arm with the bracelet in some kind of contraption to awaken Scorps. We see Ardith return with the Magi army, proving he can either fly or is the fucking Flash with the quickness it took him to return. Seriously, this couldn't have taken him very long at all, because he's there, the whole army's there, they're ready to fuck shit up. Meanwhile, Jonathan inadvertently gives Alex the idea to resurrect his mother using the Book of the Dead. Jonathan says, think of it like in the good book, she's gone to a better place, and that gives Alex the idea to bring her back. The army of jackals assemble outside while Jonathan distracts Anoxuna Moon so Alex can steal the book, while Rick confronts Imhotep one last time. In another callback, Alex asks Jonathan what the last symbol in the book is, and it's the same symbol that Jonathan didn't know in the previous movie. It was a stork, and the symbol's acetaminophen, or Menefis. I was thinking acetaminophen, Jesus. Menefis is what it is. Just as Anoxuna Moon is about to kill Jonathan, Evie saves him and takes on Anoxuna Moon. And they call each other, Anoxuna Moon calls Evie Nefertiti, and Nefertiti calls her, Anoxuna Moon, which she actually is. We never learn what her actual name was before Imhotep raised her soul. Now, as Rick and Imhotep fight, a CGI Scorpion King emerges, and Imhotep pretends to be his servant and says that Rick is there to kill him. And this is the worst effect in the movie. It's The Rock with his mullet-looking thing, and it's like The Rock's torso and head on a scorpion body. It's fucking terrible looking. The rest of the CGI does look pretty dated, but this just looks awful. It's the worst looking thing in the whole movie. The CGI would be pretty passable for the most part, I would say, at least for that time period, except for this. This is just not good. Evie and Anoxuna Moon engage in their fight. But after Evie starts throwing headbutts like a fucking boss, and Moon flees. She doesn't know the new style of fighting, so she just takes off. Squirps picks up Baltus and dismembers him into like 5 or 6 pieces by using his giant fucking scorpion claws. Outside, the Magi defeat the army. You can only kill the army of Anubis by cutting off their heads. Inside, Rick sees his tattoo on some kind of ancient drawing or whatever, and it shows the person in it using the stick that Jonathan has been carrying around, and that it opens up into a spear. Apparently, it's what is supposed to be used to kill the Scorpion King. And Rick, who has been denying the whole time that he was a Magi, and basically calling bullshit on all this, is like, okay, I'm a believer now. I think that's even a direct quote. I'm a believer. Imhotep catches the spear when Jonathan goes to throw it. Then Imhotep throws it and Rick catches it, and he then stabs and kills the Scorpion King and sends him and his army back to the underworld. Now, much like in the first movie, this starts a chain reaction to destroying the pyramid. Rick and Imhotep are both being pulled down through a giant crack in the floor. I think it's part of a bridge to get from one area to another, and there's a whole bunch of souls underneath this, and they're trying to pull them down into the underworld. I can see how Rick got in there, because he was kind of like, he was over it when he stabbed the Scorpion King, so I could see how Rick got down there. I don't know how Imhotep got down there. That's because Imhotep is clear, he's standing like across from a Scorpion King whenever Rick stabs him, and he's like, no, he's all pissed off and shit now because he can't control the army and take over the world. So I have no idea how he winds up down there, and it doesn't show, but he's down there nonetheless. Rick tells Evie to go before it's too late, but she comes to save him anyway. Imhotep asks Moon for help, but she runs away, leaving him. Heartbroken, he weakly smiles at the O'Connells before allowing himself to fall to the underworld. Now, he spent the whole first movie trying to resurrect her because of their love's undying and, all this other shit. And then he finally resurrects her, but then at the first sight of trouble, she's like, oh, bye, bitch. And she just leaves him, and this visibly crushes Imhotep. It's a good job by the actor. He really gets it across that this guy's just absolutely destroyed inside after this. And after allowing himself to fall into the underworld, we see Moon running out, and she falls into a pit of the flesh-eating scarabs, and it kills her in her attempt to escape the pyramid. Much like what happened to Benny at the end of the first movie. Alex, Jonathan, Rick, and Evie flee to the top of the pyramid while it sucks in the oasis. All the forestry and stuff is just being sucked inside the pyramid. Very high rate of speed. Izzy shows up right in the nick of time to save them. Jonathan, who's about to fall out of the balloon, grabs the big gold encrusted diamond on top of the pyramid just before it explodes into the sand. It's kind of buried in the sand. The O'Connells wave at Ardith as they fly back home. Rick and Evie kiss as Izzy and Jonathan argue over the diamond because Izzy knows that Jonathan stole the spear, and the credits roll. Positives: this movie is very much like the first one in that it is very fun. The characters have all grown, besides Jonathan, who is comic relief anyway. Rick's kind of the same guy, only he cares about the people he's with more, his family. And Evie, she's a little bit more of a badass, kind of like I liken it to how Sarah Connor was in the first Terminator and how she was in the second Terminator, where she was more of a boss. And Evie kind of has that, not quite as much, but she's definitely a lot tougher than she was in the first one. The road trip feel of the movie made it go at a nice brisk pace. We didn't get bogged down too much. We did see Imhotep achieve his goal from the first movie, but it didn't really matter in the long run. It kept the whole Indiana Jones-esque feel of it. It was a very good sequel. The negatives. Although it was for story purposes, making Evie a reincarnated version of Nefertiti was a little bit of a miss for me, only because Imhotep didn't recognize her as Nefertiti in the first movie. I can buy that she didn't remember her past life until the year of the Scorpion, because there's a little part where Rick says your dream started 6 weeks ago, and she said yeah, and he shows her a thing in a book, and he says, oh, it coincides with the Egyptian New Year, and it's the year of the Scorpion, which we learn. So I can kind of buy that, but I have a hard time with Imhotep not saying anything in the first one. You can say maybe he did recognize her, and that's why he wanted to use her as a sacrifice to bring Anoxia Moon back, and maybe it was kind of his way of getting revenge on Seti 3,000 years later. But I don't like it a whole lot. It totally works and is fine for this movie in a vacuum. But when you include the first one, it doesn't work so much for me. But it's fine. I like the movie for what it is, so I can go with it. But I don't know. It's not my favorite thing. I'll just put it that way. The CGI looks pretty bad in this one, and you can definitely tell that it's very out of date. Granted, this movie was made 18 years ago, but I think the first one, as far as the CGI goes, holds up better. The CGI in the first one wasn't that noticeable, I didn't think. Some parts, obviously, but I think in this one it was just, it wasn't as good. But that CGI rock is just fucking awful. Fucking awful. Overall, this is a good movie. I don't love it as much as the first one, but it is definitely still very enjoyable if you can turn your brain off and just enjoy it for what it is. It's a fun time, and I give it 2 thumbs up. Now, next week, I will be covering the third movie in this trilogy, The Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Now, this movie is not in the VHS timeline per se. It was released in 2008. And from my research, the last major motion picture to be released on VHS was A History of Violence in 2006. So I guess that's where the timeline ends, would be 2006. But I reserve the right to review newer movies since it's my podcast. And I'm going to stick with the VHS era for the most part, but I will make some exceptions here and there, and this is one that I'm going to make an exception for, because I feel it's important to look at where the series started in 1999 and where it ends here in 2008. Not only for the series, but for movies and kind of the culture in general. So join me next week when I cover The Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.